The Clásico tonight. Not everybody's aware of this. I think this has probably come unannounced to many of you out there, but there is a Clásico tonight. It's an early Christmas present for us football fans, and I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us on the line to talk to us about some of the backdrop to this, which is not just the fact that the teams are neck and neck at the top of the table, but also fairly remarkable build-up to this game, Graham. Both teams are going to be arriving from the same hotel, the biggest security operation around a football match potentially ever in Spanish football. What's going on here, Graham?
First of all, congratulations on your sort of Jake LaMotta approach to the morning. The news breaking here is that you're geo-blocked in Geneva.
All right.
Your Mesut Ozil moment of FIFA being a bit dickish. They're not watching you in FIFA HQ anymore. And then you have a pop at your brilliant, well-educated audience by saying they're unaware that there's a Clásico. Are you mad?
I know. I mean, some of them, it's Christmas. Everybody's out doing shopping. They're like, hang on, there's a Clásico tonight. What?
Everything else you said was true. There is something called the democratic tsunami. And because so many Catalan politicians were jailed back just ahead of when the Clásico was scheduled, 7 weeks ago, the game should have taken place about a week before that. The sentencing took place, and there were really widespread social protests all around Catalonia and Barcelona. We talked about them, your station covered them. And at that point, in my opinion, a mistaken and erroneous decision was taken that the game couldn't be played safely. I think that was wrong. But you are quite correct that the local policing, it's still not a national affair at the moment. So the Mossos d'Esquadra are saying that this is the biggest exercise they've ever mounted, certainly in living history. And it's to try and make sure that fans and players alike can get to the Camp Nou safely, because the democratic tsunami have called, they're calling it a strike here. It's not. It's protest, because Barcelona is not a gigantic city. It's relatively easy for protesters to, if not close the city's transport down, to make it very, very difficult to get around. It's a busy city, and therefore there will be protests at, whether it be the metro or the trains, certain road arteries, and the Camp Nou will be surrounded by people protesting for two things: Catalan independence and that what they call political prisoners should be freed. And you're right, anybody who's been to Camp Nou will know that in the northern approach, where you come out of the Metro Maria Cristina, as you head down the hill where the motorbikes park in the middle of the road, where La Masia, the original La Masia, is on the left-hand side, right at the top of that is the infamous hotel. It's been a football hotel for as long as it's been in existence. It was the Princesa Sofia. It's now called Reina Sofia. And it's a luxurious five-star hotel at the top of the hill, about 3.5 minutes walk to the Camp Nou. The players won't be walking, but you're right, they're both lodged there at the same time. Kickoff's 8 o'clock. The teams are expected to get to Camp Nou sometime just after 6 to be in tons of time for what is, now that we've dealt with that, a potentially beautiful match, because these sides are so evenly paired in all aspects. And in my opinion, there's a slight hint of Madrid arriving in better nick.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Why do you think Madrid are in better nick at the moment? There certainly seem like there's a brio about their young players, which has inspired their older players to remind themselves, actually, we're really good too.
There's a complete change in fitness and attitude from last season. The attitude is obviously primordial, because you can get players fit, and if they're not willing to run after people that break lines, then it doesn't make that much of a difference. But for example, I'm not necessarily saying he'll be the stand-up player tonight, but Toni Kroos is literally unrecognisable from last season when he was dialing in performances and letting players from much, much lesser teams run past him. He didn't look as if he was that bothered anymore. He does now. Maybe that's to do with something fully personal, the new contract they gave him. Often you give stars new contracts and people will say for months afterwards, well, look at them, they're relaxed. Not Kroos. It's a big change. But maybe it's also about the personnel around him. In midfield, they had a big issue, because Luka Modric at 33 last season, just off the back of playing constantly season after season and the World Cup, was a shadow of himself. He's now allowed to be in and out of the midfield, but he's fresher, far more effective and wily as a result of the Casemiro-Valverde partnership. Often they play 4 in midfield or an oscillating 3 up front, 4 in midfield, depending on with or without the ball. And Valverde, while still being deep in the throes of development, his ability to run and pick off areas where either Real Madrid are about to be threatened or where he can be the first line of pressing from the midfield has given Casemiro a lot more time to judge what he does. Therefore, that 4 of a unit, even if it's Isco instead of Modric, gives Real Madrid a beating heart whereby the back 4 are better protected. Courtois is having to do less panic work. He's improved out of all recognition. He's playing Atletico Madrid level football. And I'm not for a second saying that Madrid are miles ahead of Barcelona, but they arrive here with fewer players who are either just back from injury. Alba's just back from injury, doesn't look quite ready yet. Fewer players who look jaded. Longley has had a fantastic season and is adored by his fellow pros at Camp Nou, but has begun to look a bit jaded. Stegen is in the middle of the best season of his life, yet in the last 2 league games, he's made big clangers that have cost a goal each time. And little details like that can be influential in the build-up to what will be a high-tension, high-octane, high-entertainment match right across 90 years. They're balanced in La Liga at 72 wins apiece. How does that happen, lads? And across the entire history of the Clásico, Barcelona are ahead by 1 victory. It doesn't seem possible to me, but it's true.
It's incredible. It seems this is set up perfectly for Gareth Bale to start and score the winner tonight.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you. I think that although he hasn't given hints of that in the recent fleeting appearances when he's been flag waving or playing for Wales or recuperating from another minor twinge, it is his type of game. If he's on form and Barcelona are caught, they aren't athletically quite as good as Real Madrid. In recent years, even in the ones where Barcelona have gone like on 23rd December, this isn't the first Christmas Clásico by a long way, but 2 years ago, they went to Madrid, played rope-a-dope, and then ran away 3-0 winners. Last year, 5-1 at Camp Nou. Looks a brilliant scoreline. Was an extraordinary game, but at 2-1, Real Madrid were ripping into Football Club Barcelona. Should have equalised, should have gone ahead, hit the post, and Barcelona changed things, put on Dembele in midfield, and then pulled apart Real Madrid. But Barca have a tendency to be slightly less athletic, to be, when they get caught upfield, it looks like a Bale game. These two sides are a little bit more committed to catching the other one in the break than we've been used to over the last 10, 15 years, because the majority of games you've watched from the Clásico, and in the last decade since May 2009, there's been 21 league Clásicos and 77 goals. It's the match that guarantees entertainment. Absolutely rock solid guarantee. 17 years since the last 0-0. But if Barca are caught with their pants down high up the pitch with the crowd urging them on, is this a Bale scenario where he gets released by a lovely Cruz through ball and he runs one-on-one in on Stegen? Yeah, I take your point, Owen, definitely. First goal, Bale, if you want to have a punt at it, do.
Notwithstanding all that, the point you made about the protection being afforded the Real Madrid back 4, both defences actually aren't at the level that they want to be at. Like, neither of them are lockdown defences at the moment. They're both conceding goals, particularly away from home.
Yeah, I differ with you a little bit on Real Madrid. Real Madrid have looked increasingly solid. Do they look like a team that is dedicated to defence all over the pitch? Do they look as if it's our first priority is to not concede? No, I agree with you. And the closest I'll come to agreeing with you about Real Madrid is when they're ahead, they really don't have any interest in match management. It's like, yeah, we'll score another 2, and if you get 1, we'll score another 3. That's their ideology. It doesn't always work. I think their goals against total is really very good. But if you look at their goals scored, there are 2 things to say about Real Madrid. Benzema is on utterly exceptional form. The last season and a half has been the years of his life since Cristiano left. All the experience he gathered playing domestique to the team leader are now showing with him as team leader, but they lack a second goal scorer. Their goal total is okay, but if you look across, particularly look at the Premier League, look at Barcelona, after 17 games, Real Madrid are 10, 12, 13 goals short from where they should be given their performances. I think Varane's having his best season since he was champion under Mourinho. Courtois back to Atleti form. Ramos is Ramos. I don't know, Ger. I think Barcelona are the ones where you're right. I think they do concede too many goals, particularly on the road. But here at Camp Nou, I'm in Barcelona today. What have they played? 7 games in La Liga. They've scored 30 times, but they've consistently conceded goals that look a little bit lax, a little bit silly. And I think both teams score today. I think that's a decent bet.
How is Messi playing?
Mad. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He's producing moments of all-time genius. He's picking up personal awards everywhere. Since he came back fully fit, which was against Sevilla after 2 quite cruel injuries, particularly his calf injury, he's scored or created about 85% of Barcelona's goals, and they've been splurging goals. Last 3-4 games, Ger, I go back to, you both know the tale of when I first saw Messi. He was playing for Barca B, went along to look at this phenomenon, and I thought, I can't see it. It was about 2003. Couldn't see it because he wandered. He was lackadaisical. He almost looked as if he had a petted lip. Now, that's 16, 17 years and records ago. But at the moment, either he's a little bit tired because his pre-season was fractured by that really bad calf injury that took much longer to get back from than was expected, or else he's ticked off. And looking at him, he looks like a guy who's going in his head all the time. What? It's me. Why is it always me? It's always me. I have to rescue them. Look at that pass. Look at that. Look at the way we've been pressed. Look at the way we've given that away. Look at the fact that I've got. So in recent games, including his actually astonishing winning goal against Atleti at the Metropolitano, he's walked differently from when Guardiola said he's taking x-rays left, right and centre. Don't worry about it. He's storing information like whales sucking plankton. It's not the same now. He's giving the ball away. He's wandering down dead alleys. He's allowed to do that because what he keeps doing is either winning games or creating chances for other players to win games. But is he on full form? This guy who's won more Clásicos than anybody else, who scored more goals in the Clásico than anybody else? No, and what's more, in the last 5 Clásicos, he's only started 3 and only scored once. So I'm enjoying trying to unpick what is going on with Leo Messi in the way that the top numbers don't properly explain the underlying trend.
So what's your prediction for tonight, Graham?
2-2 on. 2-2. You knew that already.
2-2.
Both teams to score, I said. 2-2. Both teams are utterly committed to scoring and attacking. And therefore, in my opinion, it has to be both teams to score. If there's a slight favourite, I've already painted the idea that Madrid, who in the last 10 Clásicos in the league have come here and either drawn or won 5 times. They hate playing at home, Madrid against Barcelona. They've got a nose in front, but 2-2 is my prediction. And also, I predict entertainment, lush, lavish entertainment. Don't miss it.
Sorry, Graham, I just wanted to get your take on one last thing, which is Mikel Arteta. Back of most of the newspapers today, Art of War, it says, on one of the newspapers here beside me, it's going to happen now at this point, probably going to sit beside Pep for the last time tonight. And it's interesting kind of looking at Pep Guardiola and all of this, how he's certainly putting on the front of allowing one of his disciples to go and spread their wings somewhere if they wish. But I don't think it is just a front. I think this is genuinely Guardiola's philosophy, whether it is a player or whether it is a coach. He actually kind of wants to see the best for them.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very thorny subject. Depending on how it's done, Owen, do you remember Pep Guardiola's face after the defeat against Chelsea in the Champions League semi-final, when that was the Wednesday, and on the Friday it was announced by Sandro Rosé that Tito Villanova was taking over because Pep had announced that he was quitting. That caused a schism between the two men. I do, you broadened it to talk about his disciples. If you're talking about Arteta, I think that Arteta has handled this in a manner which should mean that he and Pep and Manchester City are fine. And my personal opinion is that Arteta is taking on one hell of a task. And I would be ultra attentive to the way in which my agent was structuring this deal. And I would be saying that in the first 2 seasons, I'd have my agent right. In the first 2 seasons, if they went to sack him, they'd have to pay him the full 6-year contract. And I would make a heavy penalty for Arsenal getting rid of this incoming coach if Arteta does sign it, because there's so much work to do and progress can be so slow if Arteta isn't allowed specifically the right resources, and unless Arsenal dramatically improve the accuracy of their signings, either in personnel terms, what type of men they bring in, or what quality of footballer they bring in. The reshaping needed, not for a minor improvement, but to get Arsenal to where their sponsors, their fans, the media, the owners I want to put aside, think they should be. You both know there's a damn big job to do, and that takes time. Arteta isn't simply coming in as a novice manager, taking full control. The problems there are deep-rooted. They stretch back to the climate that Wenger created, and to change a squad and to hit the marks that people expect of you and to change a culture, that's an utterly gigantic task. And he needs to ensure, if he takes this job, not only that he's got some written guarantees about money available, that this market, next market, he's got to have written guarantees that that he can scare Arsenal off from saying, well, we're losing faith. The knee-jerk reaction is to get somebody else again. That's something I'd be putting a really strong marker down on. And as far as Pep Guardiola is concerned, it's a loss to him and it's a loss to City if Arteta goes. If there's something going on at the moment in Pep Guardiola's environs, it's the fact that relatively testing problems of the edge that he got out of the entire squad and the level of fitness of key players, particularly injury, has cost him. And that is having not a burnout effect, that's too strong, but it's eating away at the state in which Pep Guardiola needs to be in order to work at peak. And who can help with that? Well, a trusted, intelligent assistant who can put opposing views. And although Guardiola will always dictate, losing Arteta at this stage, even if Rodolfo Borrell steps up, even if there's a possible return for Dominic Torre, the timing isn't great for Pep Guardiola or Manchester City. I agree with you. I think that Guardiola has ostensibly said to Arteta, I understand your predicament, you've handled it well. And if I'm not wrong, Guardiola is a tiny bit miffed at how Arsenal have handled it, particularly in the treatment of Arteta prior to appointing Emery. But wrap it up at Christmas time with a bow on it any way you want on. It's not good for Guardiola and it's not good for City.
Yeah, would you actually give Real Madrid a slight edge over Manchester City then in the Champions League?
It's way too far ahead. I said at the beginning of the season in August, Liverpool for the title, and unless the draw trips them up, Liverpool and Man City in the Champions League final is my opinion. And if they're kept apart, I think that genuinely, I don't think we're seeing a City which is miles off track. I was big and mouthy as ever about City going to Arsenal and pumping them, because I genuinely think that we're judging City by the extraordinary standards they've set rather than where they probably should be at right now. So a tip for City, Real Madrid right now, well, listen, I think you've used some, you're pissing in the wind because it's so far away. But have I doubted? Have I lost confidence in my initial tip that if the draw doesn't pair them, there is a firm chance of it being Liverpool-Manchester City in the final? I haven't wavered very far from that at all. No.
Right, that's interesting. Because I just think that it feels like Real Madrid are surging, and it feels like Man City are uncertain about where they are.
Play the tie right now, Ger. Play the tie, next weekend, and I'll be saying to you, yeah, I quite fancy Real Madrid over two legs. No doubt about it. They're far fitter. They're aggressive. They're playing a brand of football they understand. It's extremely like the brand of football that Zidane got out of them in his first 12 months, and that's to include the 6 months after he took over from Benitez and the best part of the following season. It's very identifiable. They're short of a second goal scorer. Jovic isn't going to get there enough to score 12, 15 between now and May. There are one or two things that you tickle away at, But if it was being played right now, I'd be backing you to the hill. I'd be saying, let's get into this together and have a real shout at Madrid to put City out. When it comes to February and March, there's far too many battle scars that will be accrued between now and then to start saying now definitively it'll be like this. But in my humble opinion, City's edge, that hunger, that nastiness that maybe we've seen them lose a little bit in the Premier League, will be back in the knockout stages. That mental thing about what do we need out of our careers? Why are we here? What don't we have yet? That is a big element.
Yeah, we should come back to that because it's the one thing that you would say has been lacking from their Champions League performances so far, where in those big games, they're unlucky over two legs against inferior opposition. It happens once, you're like, okay, fair enough, it's a bit of bad luck. It happens repeatedly, you're like...
No. You're talking about the barest minimum last time against Spurs. I mean, the absolute barest minimum. They should have won, not just drawn at White Hart Lane. And the goal shouldn't have stood. And there was enough evidence that the refereeing team should have not let it stand. So they lost.
Yeah.
Spurs went on. Chapeau, that's football. Brilliant. But if you're saying that they've got this, lucky white heather, would you like to buy some, sir? Tendency to not make it. It's coming. I'm telling you, you can read matches like that two ways. And I'm saying to you, they're within a hair's breadth of making it all the way to the final. And again, unless, well, let's see what happens in February.
Yeah, and see,
I'm not wavering from my shout that both Liverpool and City are eminently capable of staging that final in May.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take Real Madrid now, and I'm going to stick with it all the way through, and we can have this conversation again the week before the
Go on, babe. Well, in that case, I know what strip you'll be wearing tonight.
Yeah. Oh, no, tonight. Not at all. No, absolutely not. But I'm a neutral, of course, in favour of Barcelona. But, right, Graham, good stuff. Thanks a million. Happy Christmas if I don't talk to you beforehand.